Hey everybody, welcome back to the homestead. So this is the old workshop, as you can see, the one that I started and built 4 years ago and never did completely finish like most of my projects. But it's that time of year where I give an update on what I've been up to and what my plans are for the following year. And while I'm talking to you, Callie's just exploring up there looking for squirrels. You looking for squirrels, Callie? Let's just take a little walk around the homestead, the garden area, and the cabin, and the food plot that I'm building back behind the cabin. And then we'll come back to this area and talk a little bit about what's going on for the year. It's that time of year that I start thinking about gardening, and in this case this year I can actually see the garden. Typically it would be a foot or two under snow, but as you can see, it's all melted over the last few days. Got some cold weather coming back in this afternoon. In fact, I expect it to get pretty windy as we get a cold front coming through, so the temperatures drop back down to seasonal, but no snow in the forecast. So gonna be looking at this for another few days at least, or another week or two. Not typical. I ordered some seeds. I actually got some in the mail yesterday. I typically, or I mostly have all of the seeds that I need already in cold storage, but I decided to just order a few more varieties of different things, like some different tomatoes, different cabbage, and a few other things. So a little bit different. Lots of firewood stored now for next year, I think. Probably enough for next year, but I'm going to keep cutting. A lot of dead trees that are either still standing or that have fallen that I just want to process before they go to waste. So I'm taking any of the straighter stuff and putting them on the mill, getting those sawed into lumber. And one of the things I need to do is get those things, get the lumber under cover and protect it better. And then all the smaller stuff in the branches, saplings and branches from the bigger trees. Anything under 3 inches, basically, I'm putting that through the chipper and creating wood chips for the garden. So I'm planning on doing a lot of that, actually, getting a lot of wood chips into the garden, 2 garden areas, so that I can start really building up that soil. And I've been planting some cover crops as well, so I'm going to continue doing that. Again, dealing with really challenging conditions. That's one of the things about self-reliance in this day and age. A lot of times, like myself, you're stuck with sort of inferior land. It's not the best for homesteading or trying to grow food on. So that's why you see me continually planting and trying new things and doing things to improve the soil, but also hunting and fishing and foraging, because it's often easier or more productive to get food from the wild than it is to grow in the forest. So that's my ongoing challenge. I'm really looking forward to ramping that up even more this year. And even on my podcast, I've got some interesting guests that are experts at gardening. So if you want to follow along over there, and I'll get into the reasons for the podcast a little bit later in this video. Just talk about what I'm up to and why I'm doing that and where I'm going to be this year. This is a mix of aged sort of on one side and a little bit greener on the other, and I wish I had gotten a year or two ahead, but I'm just not at that point yet, so not all of it's perfectly dry, unfortunately. But it's good enough for this year, but it'll be better next year. So if you've been following my journey on Patreon, holy deep hole there full of water. What the heck? If you've been following my videos on Patreon over the last, say, month or so, you'll know that I bought a tractor. It's a 35 horsepower tractor. It's not huge. It weighs less than 3,000 pounds. And right now I'm using it to bring in a new stove that I bought for the maple syrup boiling. It's also like a big grill as well, like a barbecue, and a smoker in the off season, or the not maple syrup season, which is about 11 months of the year. But I'll be mainly using that for maple syrup. I just needed to, what I'm doing is improving my efficiency and everything. And what I really have been finding over the last, 5 years here, and even a few years at the old place, 4 years here. Anyway, oh yeah, the old cabin, but also all the way back to our old house in the village. On a friend's property, we were tapping maple trees there. So I've been making maple syrup for, 10 years maybe? And it's just been really inefficient the way I've been doing it with the open fire pit here by the workshop, and then the old stove, the blue stove I used for a couple years. I go through a lot of wood doing it that way. And usually I'm not prepared for it either, so I'm like getting wet wood off the ground or cutting trees down, dead trees, and cutting them up and burning them as I'm actually boiling the syrup. So this year I'm ahead of that. But to improve the efficiency, bought this new stove so that I don't have to use as much wood. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now this section back here, you can see this. It's funny. So the garden's over there about 100 yards, the main vegetable garden. This section here, I didn't use it because I had made that clearing to build a house. So then it made sense to have the garden on the north side of that. And it's also not influenced by higher ground over here. Cali, what's up, pup? I'll come over there in a minute. So that you get the higher ground there, and then that right there behind the workshop, and then all these maple trees in here. So even if I cleared out a big section of garden, I wouldn't get as much sun as I get over there. But what I'm saying, that this soil, it seems to be a lot better than over there, and I suspected that just because of the type of trees in this section compared to that one. But the soil seems to be quite deep, and it's a lot damper. Over there it's a lot sandier and drier. So that's, I've been building soil up, where here I probably could have planted directly into the ground. But I don't see myself ever clearing this section unless the trees keep dying off and I keep cutting them down and end up creating clearings. In that case, maybe I'll plant here, but I think the maples are going to do just fine. Got one cherry there, it's got a lot of burls on it and disease, so that might have to come down, and that's, I think, only one of 2 or 3 cherries I've got on this property. But all these beeches are dying, so I'm taking them down, cutting them up into lumber where I can and firewood where I can, and a lot of it's just too far gone. It's actually rotting even standing, so it's not good for anything. So it's just basically wildlife habitat. I think what I started saying, I don't think I finished saying, is the ruts here. This is like spring, basically. Like, we got quite a bit of snow and then it melted, so all the water's running off these bedrock cliffs or hills and coming down and settling into this big low area, which is creating just just really, really wet, because it's a lot of deeper topsoil, not sand like over there. It's actually, the tractor's actually sinking into it. So I think I'm going to wait 3 days. We're going to get some really cold weather starting today, like I said, tonight. And I hope the ground gets a little bit more solid so I can drive the tractor across, get that stove into the place where ultimately I want it to stay. This section here, again, if you were watching me on Patreon, you saw me cutting firewood in here for maple syrup season and talking about some plans I have for changing the workshop area a little bit and developing this spot. So I'll talk about that more on Patreon or a Rumble or something, or maybe the Shawn James channel. But Cali, I'll come over and get your dummy for you. Hold on. Yeah. So many mushrooms now. Again, on Patreon, I've shown the patrons, my patrons, and thank you for being a patron. Been showing the shiitake logs, and there's more growing out of here now. Crazy. Christmas Day, collected a few, and a couple of days ago got a bunch more, but these are producing like crazy now. Crazy time of year for this. Interesting. So this setup I'm going to retire. I should be able to use the pan still, but the fire pit, it's just keep remaking and it's not efficient. It's just using up too much of the wood. And I've taken down most of the dead stuff in this section and burned it last year. So this is one of my main deer hunting areas. So stand being over there, where I shot that young buck this year. But what I've been talking about on Patreon is moving all of this setup over to there, where I had the tractor going in where I was cutting firewood, because two reasons. One, I think I'm going to expand the area. Really was struggling whether to build the workshop, bigger workshop closer to the cabin with the mill set up and all that, but I think I'll talk about this. Well, I'm mostly talking about it on Patreon, and I'll explain in a few minutes why I'm doing things the way I am this year, and why I'm talking about these other platforms. But here, what's happening is I'm realizing now, instead of having waited like the proper way to develop a property is to, observe it for a while before you'd make any major changes to it. Problem is, I built this workshop in the first year for sure. And I didn't realize really what the deer patterns were here. So there's a trail going right there that the deer use, and it's a big oak grove up here. But there's also a huge oak right here hanging over the workshop, and the beech there, and a few other beeches that we're still producing nuts this year. But a nice little acorn or oak grove here with acorns that the deer eat. But really up there, that's where they spend most of the time. But what they like to do, what they historically did before I put this here, was come down through this valley instead of just up on the ridge. So they would go through here, down, all the way down through there to a huge swamp that's maybe, I don't know, kilometer and a half, let's say a mile. No, yeah, maybe that far. But down in that area anyway. So they'd funnel down through there. And then the odd bear as well, and the odd moose, and quite a few turkeys. So I've disrupted the pattern. So I prefer just to move this whole thing just over there, and it's not far, but there's a little ridge there that provides just enough separation to make them comfortable. And they do get relatively comfortable. Now, I haven't been using the workshop that much, so they actually have been coming right up to here. Like I said, I was able to hunt and shoot that one right there, and it actually came from up here. But I've been doing some habitat improvement for deer, including cutting some trees up here to create a bedding area. So oak trees, there's Cali up there. Oak trees that are producing acorns, but also a bunch of other species of trees that I'm kind of laying down, hinge cutting, and letting more sunlight hit the forest floor to make it a lot more thick, or make it a lot thicker so that they can be secure up there without feeling vulnerable. So that's one of the projects, but again, this might be big changes this year. So what I was going to talk about, like I mentioned, is what I'm up to in 2024 and beyond. I think just to talk a little bit about the past and on the channel and how I've ended up where I am. So when did I start? 2014, I think, were my first videos. I think my very first video might have been a canoe trip in Algonquin Park, solo trout fishing trip, spring trout fishing trip. And I think my second video might have been some homesteading stuff, like the Dexter cattle I was raising with my wife, and some chickens and pig videos, I think, maybe. So that was 2000 and, like I said, 14 or 15. So that was the plan for the channel originally. That was the brand. It was my self-reliance was a sort of to be focused on what I learned during the 2008 financial crisis and the 2010 failure of my business, and then what we did as a family, and especially my wife and I, what we did to become more resilient and to prioritize things differently. So that canoe trips were kind of just a distraction. It was something I felt I needed to do for my own personal mental health, and I decided to capture that and put it up on YouTube, really just so I could share it on the forums that I was participating in, the canoeing and camping forums. So the YouTube channel was completely separate from what I had started on my website as the My Self-Reliance brand, which, like I said, was focused more on creating resilience than wilderness experiences. So I kind of got distracted with the camping and canoeing stuff for a little bit, but then I got really back into the homesteading, and not just homesteading on our little suburban half-acre home, but to then move north and build a cabin in the woods, and then become more almost completely self-sufficient. So that the channel part, the YouTube part of my life and my content went from homesteading, suburban homesteading, like called it, I think, more like middle class homesteading. Went from that to wilderness adventures, and then back to homesteading on a wilderness scale to what it is today. But what really happened to the channels, this channel, my Self-Reliance channel, is that it became more romanticized. So I was showing a lot of the, peaceful parts of homesteading and living in the wilderness, or living in the Canadian forest, instead of like on a farm homestead. So I showed the romantic side of that, and then all the nature that I love to capture. One of the reasons I'm spending time out here is because of the nature, one of the primary reasons. So I'd like to capture that and share that. But then the channel kind of became sort of I don't know, like a Hallmark story or something, like a romanticized version of reality. Now, I really like making videos in that vein, but it sort of distracts from the reality. So that's when I tried to introduce the second channel, the Shawn James channel, and provide more information, like talk more about what I'm doing instead of just demonstrating what I'm doing. And that's been less popular for a variety of reasons. One is that it's hard. I don't always do the best job of that because that's not my primary focus, for one thing. So I sit there and talk to you like this, which can be boring for most people. But I don't know. It's just not, it doesn't appeal to as many people, because how many people actually want to do what I'm doing? So a lot of you watching this channel just like to sort of live vicariously through me with no intention of taking any paths down this to self-reliance like I have. So it's less useful to you to watch something informative, instructive, rather than just watching something that's peaceful and entertaining. So I've accepted the fact that the channels diverged like that. The channel name here doesn't make as much sense for that reason. My Self-Reliance implies that it is about teaching resilience, and because I'm not doing that and rather doing romantic videos or romanticized videos, then I don't know, it would have been more appropriate to separate these channels a little bit differently. So I would say it's where the channels have diverged, but not only on YouTube, but also by participating in these other platforms like Patreon especially, and then Rumble, and now podcasting. So it's a lot for me to manage, to be honest. I like providing Patreon patrons who really want to hear more from me or see more of what I'm doing. Provide less edited videos there, but more frequently, more frequent content, so almost daily videos at some point, periods of the year, and a little bit more raw, and I guess you could call it even more truthful, because it's showing the behind the scenes stuff that might not make the cut for this type of video on my Self-Reliance. So thank you to all the patrons. I really, really appreciate you paying a nominal fee to support me doing that. And if, like I said, if I ever disappear from YouTube, maybe that platform can continue. So I guess in this rambling, what I'm really trying to say is that there's a lot going on in the world. The crisis of 2008 that really hit us in 2010 here in Canada, and specifically me, my family, and my business, I see those conditions as being much worse today than they were then. So everything that I've been doing, I would say up to a certain point a few years ago, everything on the channel was sort of like hobby homesteading. And then I got really serious about homesteading. And now I'm almost into more of a prepper stage of homesteading. So I feel like me and my family are prepared for more challenging times. And I'm not an alarmist. I'm not overly dramatic, as you know, but I really believe that all the signs are there on multiple levels, multiple categories of society. I see as reaching sort of crisis points, and that's economics, energy, ecological, like environment, political. I see a lot of stresses sort of peaking, especially I think in 2024, and really Now, if you read the fourth turning, if you look all the way up to say 2034, I really believe we're in at least like a 6, 7 to 10 year period of crisis here, where we're going to see a lot of big changes, even on simply on the energy front, for example, where we're converting from fossil fuels to renewable energies. That's going to be an extremely painful process. There's going to be some major disruptions along that path, and it's going to be different for all of us here in Canada. Despite the fact that we're one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, our government's decided to go sort of new age and renewable route. So I know what we're doing here is actually necessary in order to really thrive over the next 10 or 15 years. And for my family, I'm really focused on doing that. So I think in 2024, what may end up happening is that I have much less of this romanticized content on this channel and a lot more instructive content and behind the scenes content on Patreon especially, and then Rumble, and deeper conversations on my podcast. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, if you're okay with dealing with harsh reality and some somewhat negative viewpoints, less optimistic viewpoints, I would say, then you might want to follow me on those channels instead of this one. Now, if you just want to watch my nature videos, more of my homestead build, still, of course, still going to do all of that. I still have a lot of infrastructure to build, but I'm going to try to keep it to that on this channel, where I'm not talking still, and I'm just trying to immerse you, the audience, in my experience, the nicer parts of the experience, rather than the behind the scenes hardships and stresses that come along with preparing for difficult times. I guess that's the gentlest way I can say it. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, of course. I'm hoping that things aren't going to be as bad as I think they are, but I don't know. I read a lot. I listen to a lot. I look at all viewpoints, both sides of every story, and I research or I study history, religion, politics, finance, all of that stuff, and I just am convinced that, well, for one thing, I don't think I should stay silent anymore. I don't think it's productive for me, I believe, somebody who's really working hard to put myself, my family, and my community in a better position, but also because of the size of the audience, the number of people that are watching these videos, that I could maybe be helpful to a bigger audience, or could maybe help people prepare for things that are not are more challenging than the lifestyle we've been living up until now. So I think it's irresponsible of me, for example, to not talk about some of the blunderings that have been going on over the last several years in the political system and financial system. I think I should kind of try to educate people as much as possible, help them prepare, and then create a community. Like, I really believe, like, we've been working on our analog, our physical community offline, and I'm feeling it like better about that. But I'm also aware that that's creating a divide in our society, in our community. Like, we're seeing a real divergence. And I think humans are seriously going to diverge over the next several decades or generations, where we've got this urban virtual way of living, and that's where the AI and robots and basic guaranteed basic income and all the policies that are more social. I think you're going to see that kind of society morph, and then you're going to see this traditional society strengthen, but also divide and diverge from the other society. So I think we're going to have less intermingling amongst our different mindsets. And I guess what I'm saying is, I'm going down this path, going back to this path, and the people that feel the same might want to continue to watch me, especially on the other platforms, or at least on the other YouTube channel, Shawn James channel, as I do things that I hope are more helpful to people to be successful on this path, and become part of a community like mine, even if you're in the area. I don't know what else to say about that, but we'll see. It's going to be an interesting year. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen here on the My Self-Reliance YouTube channel, so we'll see what happens, and hopefully things go, keep going along like they have, but I can't make any promises. So if you see me absent somewhat on this channel, less frequent uploads, shorter videos or whatever, then just go to these other platforms, and they're always in the link in the description below. The links are always in the description below, so you can always find me somewhere if you're interested. But hopefully I can keep you entertained as often as I was last year on this channel, but can't make any promises. Anyway, that's what I'm doing for 2024, so hope you follow along. But regardless, I appreciate everybody who has been following along, especially if you've been here since the beginning. And I hope you'll continue to. I really, really do appreciate it, and so does my family. So that's it. I'm going to get back to work here and take advantage of a few more days of warm weather before the snow comes back and winter actually hits. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you back here at the cabin next time. Take care.